Virginia was happy. Very soon she was to be married to Damon, a young and handsome man who had recently graduated from university. His mother, Mrs. Reynolds, considered him promising, and she didn't like Virginia, the simple girl who had just graduated from nursing school. Indeed, how could she be a match for her smart and brilliant kiddo? But Virginia knew nothing about the real attitude of her future mother-in-law. She had already bought an inexpensive wedding dress and tried it on several times, admiring her own reflection in the mirror. However, 2 weeks before the wedding, a case occurred which broke Virginia's wedding and abruptly changed her life. Late one night, on her way home from work, she heard a baby crying. Virginia went to the sound and saw a curly-haired 6-month-old boy of Asian appearance. He was lying in a basket and crying, and there was not a soul around. Dazed, Virginia grabbed the basket with the baby and carried it to her house. Already at home, she realized that she had nothing to feed him and decided to run to the store quickly and buy formula for the baby. She asked her neighbor to look after the baby, but the older woman looked into the basket and shook her head, complaining that there would be bad rumors. "And how will you explain everything to your fiancé?" queried the neighbor, shaking her head reproachfully. "Damon is a kind man. He will understand everything," confidently declared Virginia, and went to the store. But Damon not only did not understand, but also suspected Virginia to have been unfaithful. He assumed that it was Virginia who gave birth to a baby, hid him somewhere, and now she was trying to trick him. Virginia tried to justify herself so that Damon would understand that she had not cheated on him, but the guy wouldn't listen. He advised her to look for a husband in North Korea or China and left. Virginia cried with resentment. For a whole week she could not reach Damon. In the end, his mother answered her. She berated Virginia with the last words and made it clear that Damon no longer wants to communicate with her because she so meanly cheated on him. She didn't want to hear any explanations, and in the end she added that Virginia should forget Damon forever, especially since he was already dating another woman. Virginia slowly hung up the phone. Approaching the child, she looked at him affectionately. "Well, my dear, that's how much trouble you and I have now. Oh well, we'll get through it somehow. Only we have to move out of here. The apartment is rented. We will not be able to pay. We'll go to the countryside, where I inherited a house from my grandmother. We will live there." 5 years have passed. In the beginning, people in the village condemned the woman walking around with a boy who was entirely different from her, but gradually they got used to it and stopped paying attention to them. Virginia named the child Leo, and although she had some trouble with a birth certificate for him, she managed to get it. The fact that Virginia had medical education played a major role here because no doctor wanted to come to the village. They lived modestly, but the woman endured all the hardships of rural life. Leo called Virginia his mother, and he became a very dear person to her. One day, a big fancy car stopped outside Virginia's house, and a well-dressed Korean man got out, followed by a young woman. The couple headed towards the house, and the driver, an ordinary guy in jeans and a t-shirt, followed them. Virginia immediately realized that these people had come to get Leo. She let the guests go into her house, and as soon as the woman saw the boy, she immediately rushed to him in tears and began hugging him, holding him close to her and saying something. The man also came up to them and embraced the incomprehensible Leo. A little later they were already sitting at the table drinking tea, and Virginia found out from the driver, whose name was Nathan, that these people were Leo's parents. They have a high position in their home country, and because of political intrigue, their child had been kidnapped. They no longer hoped to find him alive, but they kept looking for him, and one day someone told them about Virginia and her son. After a couple of hours, his parents took Leo away, and Virginia, left alone, could not find her place for a long time. A few days later, Nathan arrived and told her that the boy was doing well and a secure and successful future awaited him. "Thank you, Nathan. I'm overjoyed that he's all right. Did you come to say only that?" "Not only that. It's just that I've never met anyone as kind as you, Virginia. I admire you. You are not afraid of judgment, ridicule, or hardship. I'm a man, but I'm hardly capable of such a selfless act. And you have brought the boy up so well. He speaks excellent English, can read and count. But the truth is, I was frightened. I cried at night and called myself silly, but I felt pity for Leo and was afraid that he would be lost without me. And the fact that he can read is not my achievement. Leo is a very clever boy." Nathan came several more times and soon proposed to Virginia. "Okay, but I don't want to have a wedding. I don't have any savings, Nathan. You, I know, aren't rich either. So let's just register our marriage and celebrate together in a restaurant." Nathan agreed, and the day before the wedding he came to Virginia and took her to the hotel, saying that he had prepared a surprise for her. "I bought your dress, and tomorrow the hairdresser will come and make your hair. Just don't argue. Do you promise?" "Okay," sighed Virginia, and looked longingly at the box with the dress she had made herself. When Virginia received the dress in the morning, she was almost speechless. The outfit was insanely beautiful and obviously expensive. When her hair was done and the woman went to the mirror, she was frightened and could not believe her eyes for a long time. It was not her, but some pretty girl from a glossy magazine. Suddenly, someone knocked on the door and said that the car was waiting for her. When Virginia drove up to the wedding place, she was even more frightened. There were men in expensive suits and women in beautiful dresses, all nodding to her and smiling. And then she saw Happy Nathan standing in the doorway. "Nathan, what does all this mean?" asked Virginia, pale. "It means that you are marrying a diplomat, not a driver," said Nathan with a smile. The young woman's amazement had no bounds. Virginia thought that Nathan was just a driver, but it turned out that he was a friend of Leo's parents and helped them in their search. Leo and his parents also came to congratulate the young couple, and when the little boy rushed to Virginia, she gently embraced him. 15 years passed. Virginia worked as a head nurse at the neurosurgery center. She was happily married and was raising a son and daughter. One day, a man was admitted to the clinic with a brain hemorrhage. Virginia spent several hours in the operating room, and when she came out, she saw an elderly woman in tears. "Excuse me, tell me, is my son going to live?" "Yes, your Damon will live. The whole team has done everything for that," said Virginia tiredly, and went on her way. Mrs. Reynolds followed her with a stunned look, and approaching the other nurse, she asked who was at her son's surgery. When she heard the name Virginia, Mrs. Reynolds could not believe it. "She has a child by a Chinese man, right?" asked Mrs. Reynolds in a dropped voice. "Oh, you mean that story? No, she just once saved the child of some Korean politician. Now she is married, has 2 children, and her husband works at the embassy," replied the nurse, and walked away. Mrs. Reynolds could not believe that she had been so wrong once. The woman thought that if they had helped Virginia then, that Damon's life would have been different, and he would not be working now as a simple manager, would not be drinking, and maybe he would not have had this brain hemorrhage. Mrs. Reynolds sank tiredly on the bench in the hallway and sighed heavily. How unfair life is, she thought. Some people are given a house and a husband and respect and wealth, and some get poverty and misery, like my Damon. Yes, Everything is unfair in this world.